Good morning. I will call the public safety meeting to order for Monday, March 10th, 2025. I will note that Senator Brock Smith, Co-Chair Evans, Representative Graber are excused. We otherwise have a quorum. And I will ask LFO staff to please review the day's agenda.
Good morning, co-chairs, members of the committee. This morning you have before you House Bill 5004, the primary budget bill for the Department of Corrections.
Okay, great. So we're not doing this.
Yeah. Oh, that's wrong. That's just wrong.
Okay, I'll skip to this. Great. Steve, can you give us an overview of DOC and what we're hearing today?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. The Department of Corrections budget is almost entirely general fund with relatively small components of other funds and federal funds. The 2025-27 current service level budget is $2.7 billion with almost 5,000 positions. DOC is a caseload-driven agency with the Department of Administrative Services Office of Economic Analysis population forecasts updated every 6 months with corresponding adjustments to the agency budget during the budget building process. And the final forecast used for budgeting is coming this next month. We will hear from Allison Daniel from DAS Chief Financial Office, and the agency will then provide their presentation. We'll have DOC here all week with public testimony scheduled for Thursday. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you. And I should have opened the informational meeting on House Bill 5004. I will do that now for Department of Corrections. And Ms. Daniel, if you would please join us. And Director Reese, welcome.
Okay, good morning, co-chairs, members of the committee. My name is Allison Daniel, and I am here on behalf of the DAS Chief Financial Office to provide an overview of the governor's recommended budget for the Department of Corrections. By way of brief and high-level background, because the agency will certainly get into more of their programs today, the Department of Corrections manages adults in custody who are sentenced to more than 12 months of incarceration for felony offenses. The department is responsible for the security, housing, care, and treatment of organs, AICs, and for utilizing all available resources to reduce recidivism and transition AICs back into their communities. DOC is comprised of 9 program areas collectively designed to provide operations of organs correctional facilities, healthcare services for those in custody, administration of the agency facilities, maintenance, and support in partnership for community corrections. The governor's recommended budget largely supports current programs and services and makes key investments across several programs to address DOC's existing and ongoing needs, including those listed here under emerging issues. One of DOC's top action items is to implement recommendations that resulted from the Gender Responsive Work Group directed by the legislature in 2022. The governor's budget includes funding for this work, as well as for 3 additional body scanners to be placed within the Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, bringing the total number of body scanners to 5. The budget also makes a $4.5 million investment to better serve the state's rapidly aging prison population and to make needed repairs to the state penitentiary. The budget does include phase-outs of one-time funding of ARPA support for facility improvements, COVID response, and the electronic health records IT project. As Steve mentioned, DOC's budget is 95% general fund, just under 5% other funds, and there is a small amount of federal funds. Overall, the budget has experienced steady growth due to inflation and state government service charges, with the governor's budget reflecting a 14% increase over the 23-25 LAB. You might notice a substantial decrease in other funds since the 21-23 biennium. During that period, the legislature shifted a large amount of general fund to other funds as the state received ARPA funds, recognizing that this fund switch would be reverted in 23-25. There is also roughly $2 million in federal funds, which comes from several federal grants related to rehabilitation and AIC training programs. This is, of course, education programs, Parenting Inside Out, and the Big Machines program. Lastly, the governor's budget includes funding for almost 4,900 FTE, which represents a 2% increase over the 23-25 LAB. Looking at the budget breakdown by category, personal services and supplies comprise a majority of the agency's budget. Special payments captures pass-through funds from DOC to counties enrolled in the Community Corrections Program. Capital outlay covers items related to telecommunications equipment, household and institutional equipment, facility improvements, and various other costs. And debt service includes bonds for projects such as HVAC maintenance, boiler replacement, and upgrades to wireless cameras and security equipment. Here we see the agency's budget distributed by division, the largest, unsurprisingly, being operations, which is responsible for security, housing, and daily operations of the state's incarcerated adults. Health services is the second largest division. This includes 24/7 dental health, substance abuse treatment, and pharmacy services at each facility. The third largest division here is community corrections, which includes the supervision, sanctioning, and service delivery for over 21,000 individuals. And the remaining divisions encompass costs that span from agency planning and leadership to overseeing AIC success from admission to release. The key cost driver for DOC The key cost driver for DOC comes from overtime pay for staff needed to maintain proper supervision, providing personal supplies to AICs, and maintaining equipment and facilities. So key investments in the governor's budget for DOC relate to recommendations from the GIPA work group. That includes $7 million and 15 FTE, studying the development of a geriatric campus and making needed repairs to the Oregon State Penitentiary. Together, the last two are a combined $4.5 million. Additionally, governor's budget invests $2.7 million to improve AIC housing outcomes upon release from an institution, $20 million to address increased costs informed by the Community Corrections Cost Study, and just over $70.5 million to make necessary upgrades to DOC's facilities statewide. GRB also provides $7 million in support of DOC's IT systems, namely replacement of the institutional staff deployment system, ongoing costs of the new electronic health record system, and continued maintenance of wireless infrastructure within DOC's facilities. Lastly, GRB assumes a $27 million reduction to vacancy savings to better align the agency's budget to expenditures. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleagues at DOC. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for DAS before we let Allison go? We appreciate it. Welcome, Director Reese.
Senator Broadman, thank you so much. And I'm going to be joined by our Chief Financial Officer, Tom Shin, who's going to help me with this presentation. And I appreciate the work of Allison and our colleagues at the Budget Office as they help work with us and guide us through this process. And I'm going to add a little bit of context to her presentation on the budget, so how the funds are expended and where the money, the resources go within our budget, and with that, the value that we place on the work we do. I'll start by introducing myself formally. My name is Mike Reese, and I am the Director of the Department of Corrections. I've been in law enforcement for 35 years, and I served as a chief of police and as a sheriff, and I'm excited and humbled to be here today as the Director of the Department of Corrections. I believe in the work we're doing. When we treat people with dignity and respect, when we give them the resources they need to be successful, we can have a profound positive impact on the lives of the adults in custody and reduce recidivism. When we do that well, all Oregonians are safer. So next slide, please. So the photo you're looking at is from a father-child fishing event at the Oregon State Penitentiary, where our partners at the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife stocked a pond, and we allowed fathers and their kids to come and fish for a day. This was a collaboration that really is a reflection of our commitment to maintaining the connection between adults in custody and their children, and teaching them how to bait a hook as well. We really value this connection. We want to have pro-social activities like that at all of our institutions. So as you can see, we have a busy agenda. And over the next few days, you're going to see and hear from a lot of our leaders in the organization, including Deputy Director Heidi Stewart. And we've got a lot of our leadership team here, but two of my favorite colleagues are our canine detection team. We have Trig and Say here, and Sig and Trey here. Sorry about that. And their handlers, they're great too. But our drug detection teams are a great addition to our work, and I want to just give them a shout out. And they're losing, their interest in this process, so they may have to leave. Next slide, please.
We'll allow it.
So our mission at DOC has evolved over the years, and our new mission statement better reflects the work we do protecting communities, transforming lives, and promoting accountability. Next slide, please. And as you can see by this organizational chart, we are a large agency with a lot of divisions. And as I said, you're going to meet many of our leaders over the next few days as we talk about our budget and the work we do. So I wanted to give you a little bit of context about the agency. Our state prison system goes back to the 1860s. However, DOC has a relatively new structure created by the legislature in 1987. We operate 12 prisons across the state with nearly 12,000 adults in custody. And we're responsible for managing parole and probation in offices in Lynn and Douglas County. As you can see, we are a statewide agency. In many of our rural communities, we are one of the largest employers in those communities. So leading such a large and complex public safety organization such as the Department of Corrections requires an effective management system built on these four pillars. First, like a lot of public safety agencies, we are policy and procedure driven. We're guided by Oregon revised statutes, by OIRs, and those are the things that we then train our employees to. That develops consistency in operations, establishes a foundation, and the annual in-service training reinforces that throughout the course of a person's career. Next, we monitor those policies and procedures and how we train in our operational setting to ensure compliance. And then finally, we have systems of accountability that hold people accountable. They're a reflection of the work we do and who's responsible for doing it. We are constantly evolving, and this management philosophy is built on a cycle of continuous improvement. Next slide, please. And I'll just talk briefly about some of the things that Allison pointed out. This slide shows our share from a statewide perspective of the governor's recommended budget. And as you can see from the pie chart on the right, our budget is 95% from the general funds. And given the concern about what's happening in Washington, D.C., I just wanted to share this with you so that you can see that changes in federal funding to our budget may be nominal. It could impact, however, our partner agencies and some of the work we do through community partners. This slide shows the governor's recommended budget breakdown for DOC in our various divisions. It's similar to what Allison showed you. And as she pointed out, it's important to remember that with 4,800 plus employees, our budget is made up of people doing the work in our institutions, our facilities, and in community corrections. This slide shows our policy option packages in the GRB by fund, and the majority of the requests you are reviewing are from the capital or bond funds. And then this next slide shows greater detail on each of the policy option package requests. And you'll hear more from me and the assistant directors on each of these later in our presentation. We'll dig into the details of what they are. So I'm going to pivot a little bit and talk about our staff, because the good work we do at DOC is primarily the result of the great partnership we have with our volunteers and the great work by our staff inside our institutions. And I want you to have a little bit of background information and context on those staff. This picture here shows our security team, officers, corporals, and sergeants. We have over 2,200 men and women wearing a uniform inside our institutions and facilities. So this staff shows that we have 35% of our corrections staff are female, 65% are male. Most public safety agencies that I've worked at are less female. You know, they have about 15% female. We're a little larger in that. In community corrections, it's an even split in gender. Next slide, please. As you can see from this slide, the diversity of our staff over the years is growing. And this better reflects the diversity of the state of Oregon and also the adults in custody. And I just want to say that we are so proud of our employees who have served or still serve in the military. 14% of our employees are veterans. These are 2 employees from our Snake River facility. I want to give a shout out to Officer Devin Anderson and Captain Casey Cleaver. You're looking at a picture of them in the 2 uniforms that they wear in service to Oregonians. We support those on active duty, and we have members currently deployed overseas, and I just want to say thank you to them for their service to our country. We participate in a really great program called Partnership for Your Success. It's called PAYS. It's a partnership with the Army, and it guarantees all of their service members an opportunity to interview for a job. So now that you've heard a little bit about our staff, let's talk about the adults in custody. It's important that we share information about the adults in custody so that we have a better understanding of the people incarcerated, and that's fundamental to meeting their needs and improving outcomes. So this picture is from a recent graduation at our women's prison in Wilsonville, Coffee Creek Correctional Facility. And I just have to say, Friday night I was at Coffee Creek for a graduation from our cosmetology program. We had elected leaders or representatives from their offices there, and it was a wonderful celebration of the work those women are doing to better prepare for life outside of custody with job-ready skills. As you can see, our adult in custody population is mainly male. And then as we look at the next demographic on race, it should be noted that some minority groups are overrepresented within our correction system, which is consistent throughout the criminal justice system. We'll go to the next slide, please.
Co-chair.
Thank you. So could you back up to that slide?
Yes.
Last I saw, Oregon demographics, 67% were white. So technically, 72% white. White folks are also represented in there as well.
Chair Broadman and Co-Chair Evans, yes. Again, our population of adults in custody is similar to the statewide population. There are overrepresentations with Blacks and Native Americans.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the epiphanies I had when I first walked into the Oregon State Penitentiary was seeing wheelchairs and walkers outside nearly every cell on the bottom floor of our housing units. You're looking at a picture from OSP, and the graph shows you the age range of the adults in custody. As you can see, we have over 1,200 adults in custody who are 61 years of age or older. That population has grown over the years and is consistent with what DOCs are seeing across the United States. Their 61 is not my 61. They present about 15 years older than their chronological age, and many of them have significant health issues. And that's one of the reasons as we get into this presentation why an aging facility like the Oregon State Penitentiary does not meet the needs of an aging population. So I wanted you to have some context about how people come into custody in our facilities. Primarily, the folks in custody are there because they're convicted of felony person crimes. Those include acts of violence, force, or threats of force. It's the robberies, the assaults, sexual violence, attempt murder type charges. So creating a safe and secure facility for AICs with this type of background requires significant planning and appropriate housing opportunities before we make any decision about where an individual is housed. This slide shows that adults in custody have significant needs. So as you can see, 65% have a diagnosed substance use disorder. 50% of the adults in custody coming into custody need basic remedial education. And 60% would benefit from some sort of mental health treatment. It's a population with high needs, and many have co-occurring needs. So as we talk about key performance measurements, our population forecast, and Allison briefly touched on this in her presentation, this comes out every 6 months. It's guided by CJC and DAS. This is from the CJC dashboard, which you're probably familiar with. And it shows our population forecast for males. And as you can see, we are below our capacity level currently, but we're going to reach about 95% of capacity in 2034, 2035. That's important because as we house people safely within our system, we need a little bit of space, that 4 to 5% that allows us to house people safely as you classify folks. So you saw that 75% come in with a person crime. You may need to have people with a violent history housed differently than someone who's coming in to a minimum custody setting. We want everybody to be safe and have the appropriate housing. So as we get closer and closer to full capacity, it becomes more and more challenging to house people. And looking out to that range, it allows us to predict when we're going to need to open a new institution. And that is something that takes many, many years of study and budgeting before we can get to. So I wanted to share this information with you about the population forecast for men. And then we'll take a look at the population forecast for women. And as you can see from this forecast, that we are below and will remain below where we can house women at Coffee Creek. So we have capacity in that institution.
Representative Chodson.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you for the presentation. On the previous slide for the one with men, although I guess we could look at either one, it looks like we're incarcerating about 3 times the number of people that we were in 1985, give or take. How does that compare or correlate with population growth in Oregon? And then how does that also compare or correlate with crime rates or public safety indexes in Oregon?
Here, Chair Broadman and Representative Chodson, I'm going to have to get back to you on the population in Oregon and the changes over the years in population growth. I know that as a young deputy sheriff hired in 1989, that we were at the start of a growing crime trend across the United States, and that we saw more and more crime issues in our community, certainly in Portland, where I was a deputy sheriff and a police officer. We saw that growth. We also opened up institutions across the state of Oregon over the last 40 years to meet the needs of housing people in custody. So our prison population has grown, so has our footprint across the state with institutions as we saw people sentenced to prison.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So has there been any analysis done? Two institutions were closed in, I believe, 22. Any analysis on how much further out we would have been before we reached full capacity had we not closed those 2?
Chair Broadman and Representative Lewis, we haven't done an analysis, but certainly those institutions, the capacity impacted the future need for planning for a prison in Junction City. So reducing our footprint at Mill Creek and Shutter Creek definitely impacted the forecast and the ability to manage the population that we have in custody. One of the challenges we have right now is we don't have enough minimum bed space. So we're housing people that should be in minimum custody in some of our medium custody facilities. And again, minimum custody facilities are designed to help transition people who are going to be leaving custody soon. So it's important to have the space in those types of facilities to meet the needs of the population.
A follow-up, Co-Chair. So have those two facilities been sold, or does the state still own them? Do we know?
Chair Broadman and Representative Lewis, those two facilities have been sold. We no longer control them.
Okay, thank you.
So as we look at the population forecast for women, one of the things to note is that you can see we were over capacity at our Coffee Creek institution. That required us to take programming space and use it for housing. So we had to lessen the programming opportunities because we were putting beds in those rooms. We were also housing women in a less safe environment as we crammed more people into dormitory-style housing with beds. So it's important to remember that when we have these emergency-type beds, they have an impact on the system, the programming opportunities, and the safety of the institutions. One of the key performance measurements that we look at is recidivism. And Jeremiah Stromberg is going to be talking in more detail about this in his presentation on community corrections. But I wanted you to take a look at this dashboard from CJC because it shows reincarceration in DOC. This is that 3-year window that we do a look back. And as you can see, 11.1% of the people that are released from custody are reincarcerated. I want to flip that script and say that almost 89% of the people who release are released back in the community safely. These are other key performance measurements that we look at. Some of those are tied to whether or not people are working inside the institutions, per ballot measure 17, how many staff assaults. Some of these are really good performance measurements, and some of them may be improved upon. And I want to talk a little bit about what we think would be better ways to measure how we're doing in the criminal justice system and at DOC. This is information that came from a recent Correctional Leadership Association's 2025 report on social determinants of health applied to the corrections setting. And this peer-reviewed research has shown that recidivism is not just the one metric we should be paying attention to, but we should be looking at economic stability. How many people are leaving custody with job-ready skills? How many people are leaving custody with educational opportunities? How many folks have health care and a connection to community-based healthcare programs? What type of neighborhood are we releasing people to? Is it a safe place for them? And then finally, are we releasing folks to stable housing? And these are better metrics, I think, for us to look at. Unfortunately for us at DOC, it's really hard to meet some of the metrics or to measure some of these metrics because of when you'll hear about the ancient IT structure that we're currently using for our offender management system that Community Corrections also has to use. So all of our Community Corrections partners have to use our aging IT infrastructure, which makes it really challenging to ask these types of questions. But I think these are the types of answers that you want and I want to make sure that our system is working well.
Director, can you go back to the list of KPMs?
Yes.
Are we going to have, so I see staff assaults, the target is 80, and we had 2024, 125. Are we going to have an in-depth discussion of workplace safety this week, or is now a good time to talk about that?
I'm Chair Broadman. I'm happy to talk about it. You'll also hear today from our Assistant Director in charge of operations, Josh Highberger.
I can wait till then, thank you. I mean, unless you want to comment, that number seems concerning to me.
Any staff assault is concerning, even one. The measurements we're looking at are fairly arbitrary. We run safe institutions. Relatively speaking, we have very few staff assaults across all of the institutions. So when you think about how often staff, we have 12 institutions. They run 24/7 operations with 12,000 adults in custody. That creates a lot of opportunity for some sort of interaction that could be negative. So for us to have, again, any staff assault is reprehensible and should be prevented. And it's important that we measure it. But we have relatively safe environments for our staff.
And presumably during ops, we can talk about tools to continue that trend of safety?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
So I'm sorry.
Did you have one? Rep. Graber?
If I may, Co-Chair,
Yes.
just to follow up on that, I am curious about that, on what amount, are all those assaults looked at and evaluated by medical personnel, or is that any physical contact?
Chair Broadman and Rep. Graber, the staff are reviewed by medical if needed. The assault could be a minor injury, up to we've had staff that have had to be transported to the hospital just last week. So again, we take the safety of our staff seriously, hold adults in custody accountable when they assault staff or other adults in custody. But we have medical that will take a look at our staff immediately if they're needed.
Thanks, Director.
Representative Chosen.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Similar to the Co-Chair's question, I saw one of the KPMs related to offsite medical health care. I also see health services on our challenges. Is this an appropriate time to ask about health services in DOC, or is there a better moment in this presentation to get into that?
Chair Broadman and Rep. Choatson, I'm going to talk about our challenges right now. So it's perfect timing.
Perfect.
So I want to talk about some of the issues we have related to healthcare, staffing, gender-informed practices, contraband coming into our facilities, re-entry for adults in custody back into the community, our aging infrastructure, and IT systems. So let's jump right into healthcare. Tomorrow we're going to focus on health services, but I want you to hear from me today about the challenges and the direction we're headed within health services. As you are aware, we've had a recent investigation into health services. It was a comprehensive look at leadership and personnel interactions. And at the end of that investigation, I determined it was appropriate that we move in a different direction and that we have new leadership in health services. Leadership matters. And it's important that leaders are supporting the work of the line staff, the doctors and nurses and other healthcare providers in our system, that they're creating structures and organizational processes that work well. And that was clear, and it was clearly not happening based on the investigation. Deputy Director Heidi Stewart is now in charge of health services, the administrative functions, the coordination, and the collaboration. We have Dr. Mike Seal in charge of medical decisions, along with Dr. Rob Nutt in pharmacy, Dr. Dravis in psychiatry, and Dr. Shook in dental. These are the medical providers that make the medical decisions and work with Deputy Director Stewart on managing this large, complex health services organization. We have had and continue to be challenged with recruiting providers and nursing staff. And I know that we are working, Dr. Seal is working with an outside organization to try and get more providers in. We are doing everything we can to have more nurses and doctors hired full-time to fill those vacancies. When we don't have full-time staff, we hire contract staff from a locum, a provider who comes in and provides temporary staff so that we have people meeting the needs of the adults in custody. Certainly, we have litigation issues, and I'm doing everything I can across the agency to reduce risk and reduce litigation at DOC. We've just seen a lot of it, some of it out of personnel matters and the interaction in health services, some of it out of delays in offsite visits. And the policies and procedures that we had in place under the previous leadership were not working effectively to get adults in custody to their outside visits to provide the care that they needed inside our facilities. We have hired the Falcon Group to come in and work with us for the next 6 months on a comprehensive review of our structure, our policies and procedures, to make recommendations based on best practices from across the United States and what they're working with other DOCs. And we're not waiting for their comprehensive report to be done before we're making changes. Our deputy director is already starting to make changes in how we coordinate with transport to get people to outside visits faster. We're making changes based on what Dr. Seal has recommended and what Falcon has seen around our therapeutic levels of care committee, which was delaying instead of supporting the decision-making by our providers. So we're making changes now to better align our practices while we're also working on a comprehensive report that'll make sure that our structure and our resources and our support for the staff doing the work are in alignment with what we expect and what we want out of our health services. And I'm happy to pause here and take any questions.
Questions? Representative Chosen?
Thank you, Co-Chair. Appreciate you sharing all that. Could you go back to the KPMs for a moment? I just wanted to kind of discuss those in context of this. I see the only one that relates, I think, to medical care on there, or I guess there's two, but is offset medical health care. Target is 1%. It's in the green, which I assume means that 1% is meant to be the maximum. Is that the correct interpretation of what that KPM is?
Chair Broadman and Representative Chosen, yes. I think that's where KPM sometimes can get in the way of good practice.
Yep.
So you've got a KPM that says we want to reduce the number of people we're sending to outside visits, but we may need to send more people to outside visits as people have higher acuity, higher needs inside our system. We hire, for example, mainly internal medicine providers, so the folks that are kind of globalists. And when we have people that need specialty visits, oncology, for example, we're going to need to send them appropriately to an outside visit, an outside provider. So I don't know that this is a KPM. And again, if we're telling leadership, hey, keep it below 1%, that may actually impact the effectiveness of our health services operations. So how we measure and how we direct folks is really important.
Representative
Thank
Chosen?
you. Thank you, Co-Chair. And that's exactly kind of where I was getting. I mean, some KPMs measure things better than others in terms of what we're going for, but I was wondering your thoughts on if that was indeed kind of counterproductive, not just not measuring the right thing, especially in a moment where inside DOC it looks like healthcare is a little bit in flux or it's in a moment of transition, if trying to keep that number low is perhaps counterintuitive or counterproductive.
And if we can meet the needs of adults in custody with our on-site medical care, that's less expensive and faster than scheduling is. So we all work with providers here and community-based. We know that sometimes scheduling is a challenge. And getting to our healthcare professional, there's delays in it at times. So if we can do it internally, we want to. But some of the needs of this population require us to take people to outside visits. So I wanted to jump into another challenge for us. I've talked briefly about our providers and nursing staff, the vacancies there. Hiring security staff has been challenging at several of our institutions as well. We have a lot of vacancies at Coffee Creek, at Deer Ridge, at our Eastern Oregon Correctional Institution, and at Two Rivers in Umatilla. There are regional differences and reasons why it's challenging to hire staff in those areas. I wanted to kind of give you a broad view of what the vacancies cause within our system. So in a 24/7 operation, where you got to have folks on duty, when you're managing a housing unit, your corrections officer, you're responsible for that housing unit, your shift ends, and there's nobody to replace you, you're staying. And so your supervisor is coming to you and saying, I need you to stay for another 8 hours. So we have a lot of mandatory overtime that leads to burnout, leads to retention issues for us, and frankly, leads to hiring problems. So if you're coming into our system as a new employee and you're thinking, do I really want to work that many hours? Some of the folks in security say, no, I want a better work-life balance. So it is a challenge for us. I want to jump to how we're measuring. If we look at this next slide, it shows where we have vacancies. So the red bars are vacancies at several of our institutions, and the green bars are where we have the funnel, the number of people, applicants in the system. And it shows, this slide shows how we're collecting key data to measure the impact of new initiatives. And while the number of applicants has grown, so we're moving in the right direction, we also know that we hire approximately 12% of those applicants. So if we've got 120 people in the queue at Coffee Creek, for example, we're probably going to hire 10 to 15 of those applicants because we want to get to the very best people. we want to make sure we're hiring good security people. So we have rigorous background checks. We have psychological testing. We have medical testing before we hire people into our system. And then you can see it's a regional impact. So at our Snake River facility in Ontario, we're fully staffed, and we have a plethora of applicants for jobs, and we're telling them, would you consider moving to Wilsonville, to Coffee Creek, where we have a vacancy and a job ready for you right now? Now, a lot of folks aren't interested in moving from Eastern Oregon to the Valley, and so it's challenging to get people at Wilsonville. Certainly, the regional impacts, if you look at Coffee Creek, for example, one of the reasons we have hiring challenges there is that we have a lot of competition from Multnomah County, Clackamas County, and Washington County, all large jail systems that hire similar types of people working in corrections. They may pay a little more. They may have a little better benefits. They may have a little bit better work-life balance. And so that makes it really challenging to hire people at Coffee Creek. We are in bargaining right now, and I imagine some of these issues will be addressed during bargaining as we look at Coffee Creek and maybe regionalizing how we pay people and support them. We are making some changes in how we hire people. We have a temporary corrections officer program that gets people onboarded right away. So we saw, this came out of our facility, an idea that came out of the staff at Eastern Oregon, where they said, we're losing people to Amazon and other private employers who can hire in a weekend or a week, and we hire in 4 or 5 months. Rightfully so, we have processes that lead us to getting to the right people. Some of those are statutorily mandated processes. So working with DAS, we created a temporary corrections opportunity so that we can bring people on quickly within a month and get them through the onboarding process, get a paycheck for them and keep them engaged, start their training while we go through all of the background processes for them.
Representative Graber.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and thank you, Director Reese. Is the mandatory overtime equally distributed regionally across institutions, or is it higher in some relative to others?
Chair Broadman and Rep. Graber, it is definitely a regional issue. Coffee Creek, Eastern Oregon Correctional Institution, Two Rivers Correctional Institution, OSP, those are the ones that we have a lot of mandatory overtime or a lot of overtime at those facilities. So I would say Coffee Creek is probably the worst in terms of mandatory overtime that I've heard from staff. It's just a challenging environment. We have a lot of aspirational hopes there. You know, we're making changes at Coffee Creek that I'll get into about the gender informed practices assessment. And it puts pressure on security staff. We have a lot of mandatory overtime because we want to keep things open. We want to have programming. We don't want to be in modified operations where we have to close parts of our facility. We are doing as part of
Sorry,
our.
one sec, Director.
I'm sorry.
Representative Helfrich.
Thank you, Co-Chair Broadman. Director Reese, you mentioned the temporary corrections officer. What's been the ability for them to hold on to those employees and get them fully employed through the process? Because we did something similar to that when you and I were with the Bureau, and it's an innovative way to do it to keep people engaged. What's been your success rate of retention?
Chair Broadman and Rep. Helfrich, thank you for the question. It's been good. We've lost a few because, as we go through the process of onboarding people and doing that comprehensive background check, we find that they're not the right person. But the majority of those temporary officers have stayed engaged, and we're getting them through the process. It is a relatively new program. It is at 3 of our facilities right now. As we pilot it, we want to expand it to the other facilities once we get the process pieces worked out.
Thank you.
Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So, going back to the closure of the 2 institutions in 22, were you able to keep a lot of those employees, or did they move on to other things? I'm not sure if during that closure you were allowed to absorb people to keep the overtime down.
Chair Broadman, Rep. Lewis, yes, we were able to move those staff that wanted to move. It was easier from Mill Creek here in the Salem area to absorb employees into our system. The closing of Shutter Creek, that was a remote facility in Coos Bay. Some people were connected to that community and stayed there. Others moved to facilities here in the Salem area or throughout our system.
Okay, thank you.
But we had employment opportunities for those folks.
Thank you.
We're also doing, in terms of some of the strategies and initiatives, we're doing marketing outreach on radio, TV, social media. We recently ran ads on KPTV, strategically airing commercials during programming with higher female viewership. So we're intentionally targeting social media and our advertising to diversify our staff. I want to jump into another challenge for us, and this was highlighted in the 2023 Gender Informed Practices Assessment. And that report outlined the changes that needed to be made at Coffee Creek. And while we have made progress, and we've put that progress up on our website so you can see it, we've made a lot of changes, both to the facility and to the programming that's happening there. Some of the vacancies in staffing have impacted our ability to move forward. And some of the key positions needed to be funded, and it's in the governor's recommended budget to keep us moving forward and changing the dynamic at Coffee Creek and implementing all of these recommendations. For example, we need release and reentry support. So as women release from custody, we want to make sure that we're doing a warm handoff to stable housing, employment opportunities, and community corrections. We want to train our staff on trauma-informed practices. We want to increase the number of staffing there. And then there are some positions specific to PREA that will enhance our investigations and speed up processes in follow-up and things of that nature. The governor's recommended budget includes policy option packages to support the GIPA work at Coffee Creek. These strategic investments will help ensure that Coffee Creek staff continue to implement the recommendations for incarcerated individuals. It includes things like the GIPA manager, an administrative specialist, sexual assault liaison, PREA compliance manager, and housing and reentry supports, body scanners so that we can reduce the need for unclosed searches. So all of these things go into a gender-informed response to the needs of the women in custody at Coffee Creek. I want to talk a little bit now about another challenge that's impacting us, and this is contraband coming into our system. The picture you're looking at is mail that came into TRCI, our Two Rivers facility, in November of 2022. And mailroom staff identified 3 pieces of legal mail that were coming in which looked suspicious. They verified that the adult in custody receiving the mail was not a client of the law firm on the return label. So they opened an investigation, and they found 36 strips of Suboxone inside the envelopes. Further investigation showed that the mail was sent by a former DOC employee who had been terminated and prosecuted in 2021 for official misconduct and conspiracy to commit a Class C felony when she purchased a firearm for an adult in custody. Contraband, such as drugs, cell phones, and weapons, are a continuing concern to us. We desire a safe and sober environment that allows people to heal and feel a sense of personal security. So a lot of the adults in custody come into our facilities from unsafe situations. They don't feel safe, and that may be part of the trauma in their environment in their life. So we want to create an environment that helps them heal and supports the work they need to do to get better. Drugs such as methamphetamine, marijuana, fentanyl, and spice make it difficult for people with substance use disorders to maintain their sobriety. And that's why the support of this legislative body for our pilot drug detecting canine teams, the wastewater testing that we're doing at 3 facilities, changes to mail rules, the just the robust response to contraband is helping to ensure a safe environment. We are looking at new technology. So drones are a threat where people can use a drone to drop contraband or such as weapons or drugs into our facilities. Other DOCs are experiencing that. We're exploring drone detection software right now. We are doing everything we can to be forward-thinking and forward-looking in how we respond to these challenges. The next challenge I want to talk to you about is our aging infrastructure, and primarily it's at OSP, but we have other aging facilities. This slide shows a photo of a housing unit at the Oregon State Penitentiary. It is 5 tiers of housing, so what you're looking at is 5 tiers of celled housing. The bottom tier, as I said, usually has a walker or wheelchair outside of it. That's because there are no elevators in any of these housing units. There's no HVAC system. So last summer, when the temperature reached over 100 degrees in Salem, the deputy director and I walked up to the 4th and 5th tier to experience what was going on. It was unbearable. It was over 110 degrees on the top levels. Adults in custody were soaking their t-shirts in cold water in their sinks and then putting it over their heads to stay cool. Staff in their uniforms, of course, were overwhelmed with the heat. The aging infrastructure doesn't have the treatment space that meets the needs of the population in custody. And OSP in particular has over $111 million of deferred maintenance. So you're going to be hearing from Assistant Director Tom Shin about our administrative services and facilities, but he's going to get into the details of a feasibility study to replace the Oregon State Penitentiary with a modern facility that includes a geriatric facility. I want to spend a little bit of time. One, we have a vibrant relationship with our community corrections partners, whether it's at the county or the sheriffs, or the 2 agencies that we manage. But there are challenges with that warm handoff with community corrections. Again, we don't have the rich data that we would like to have to support decision-making, mainly because of an aging IT system that we have. We anecdotally believe about 50% of the adults in custody are releasing to what I'm going to just refer to as unstable housing, a shelter bed for a night or a week, not a place to live. We need to have more employment opportunities and job-ready skills, and then to match them in the community that the person's releasing to, and a connection to a healthcare provider and treatment programs upon release. Those are the things that are going to lead to a successful outcome for the Department of Corrections and our community corrections partners. So you've heard me mention it several times. I'm going to show you the green screen that reflects our aging DOC offender management system, fondly referred to as the DOC 400. We use it. All of our community corrections partners have to use it as well. It's the interface for all of our partners and our offender management system. It was built in 1989, so you can imagine what was technology like in 1989. We're still using it. You're going to be hearing again from Tom Martin about the need to replace this system. We're also talking about wireless communication system upgrades so that we can provide more programming and enhance technology within our institutions.
Representative Graber.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you, Director Reese. First of all, I'm not surprised there isn't a message that popped up that said you have died of dysentery, because that's the era that it looks at. Does this have any backup in any sort of cloud, or is it just like a flop? I don't even want to.
Chair Broadman and Rep. Graber, I will let Tom Martin speak to the challenges with this system.
Okay.
We cannot make changes to it without fundamentally putting potentially causing a catastrophic failure of this system. It is at end of life and has been for over a decade. Rep. Helfrich and I were part of Region, the change from the Portland Police Data System, which was a legacy system from 1989. We replaced it when I was chief of police back in 2011. That was, I know the challenges that go into onboarding this technology, but it's needed because if we don't have it, we have a catastrophic failure. Impacts not only us, but all of our system partners at all 36 counties. And I think you'll probably hear from our community corrections partners on the need for this.
Thank you.
We also want to expand, WorkSource Oregon and our adult post-secondary education. That all is supported by technology. So as I wrap up my presentation, I want to share some of the successes that are happening, shifting the workplace culture, workforce programs, the work we do at Oregon Corrections Enterprises, education partnerships that are robust and rich, and then the community impact of some of the programs that we're doing at DOC. We're training corrections officers differently today than we were last year, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We are taking the information and the culture change that we've experienced in Norway, and we're bringing that to Oregon. And we're bringing it to Oregon within the Oregon context. We're not going to replicate what's going on in Norway for a variety of reasons. Some of, they exist in a different system where there's support systems upstream from the criminal justice system, housing, employment, educational opportunities. But we do believe that we can professionalize our workforce, that we can humanize the relationship between corrections officers and adults in custody with appropriate boundaries, that we can normalize the corrections experience, and that we can teach crisis communication skills, de-escalation skills, so that there's less reliance on force. This is something that's happened in policing successfully. We're going to mirror that in corrections. We're professionalizing our corrections, basic corrections academy by getting the corrections officers now 18 hours of credit hours through Chemeketa. So they've reviewed our curriculum, and where it's appropriate, they're giving us college credits that I hope will inspire corrections officers to continue that professional and academic journey to a college degree. We believe in dynamic security, respectful communications between staff and adults in custody, and using problem-solving skills instead of a reliance on use of force. I've made changes to our promotional processes, so it is professionalizing those and taking out bias and the perception of bias. We have new manager training so that our managers are better trained to deal with personnel matters, and we're holding ourselves accountable and being transparent in the work that we're doing. Workforce programs. So at each of our institutions, we have workforce centers. These are small employment offices in each institution that connect adults in custody to jobs. We have pre-apprenticeships through partnerships with the Iron Workers, Local 29, Bricklayers, Local 1, and the Cement Masons, Local 555. I want to give a shout out to all of our partners in this work. We also have apprenticeships in electrical, HVAC, structure welding, sheet metal fabrication. We have vocational training that's going on, including cosmetology, which you saw if you happen to see KPTV. We've got that in welding, building construction tech, automotive tech, heavy equipment operations, and flagger certifications. This is all setting adults in custody up for success when they're released so that they have job-ready skills. And then I want to spend a minute talking about Oregon Corrections Enterprises. It's a semi-independent state agency authorized in 1999 by the legislature. And it is completely paid for. It's a self-sustaining agency within the Department of Corrections that's basically working to provide adults in custody the job skills they need and the training they need to be successful. They provide meaningful work to adults in custody and training and support in a self-sustaining way. OCE operates 13 lines of businesses in 34 program locations in 10 of our facilities across the state. I just visited OSP last week, and we have a new program, Braille, where we have adults in custody transcribing the written word into Braille so that sight-impaired individuals in our community have access to books. This is a great partnership that pays well for the adults in custody, and when they leave custody, the company that hires OCE will hire them to continue doing that work. Again, we have approximately 2,100 AICs engaging in work with OCE, and many of these are pictured here. You can see just the great opportunities that we have. OCE was featured on the CBS Sunday Morning show this past weekend, our Prison Blues line of clothing. You heard from adults in custody on the programming, the great opportunities they have, and the value, the personal value that they get from working at OCE. It was interesting to see that OCE jeans are popular in Japan. And the morning show took a trip to Japan to hear from clothing stores there about the popularity of the clothing line.
Co-chair.
So thank you very much for this. As a kind of a marker for something offline, I'd like to follow up on the process by which OCE can develop or perhaps purchase something that's been developed, but as a production process for your folks to be able to use. I know that there have been over the past 3 decades different rules about competitiveness, non-competitiveness, and what you can and can't do. But for public usage, for public benefit, I'm curious if we might be able to add another category, but I'd like to have the conversation as a follow-up.
Certainly. So I want to give a shout out to the Higher Education Coordinating Commission and the Oregon Coalition of Higher Education in Prison. These are vibrant and rich relationships that allow us to bring educational opportunities inside our institutions. Colleges and universities across the state like PCC, PSU, the University of Oregon, Chemeketa, Treasure Valley, Central Oregon, and Eastern Oregon University all provide classroom opportunities for adults in custody, whether it's in our institutions or online. These are really popular programs, and we have had adults in custody graduate from some of these programs already. And it's only expanding and growing. You're going to hear more about it from Assistant Director Larry Bennett in his presentation. And then one of the key concepts in restorative justice is giving back to the community. It's both responsibility and personal accountability for the adults in custody. You're looking at a picture of our Joys of Living assistance dogs. These are purpose-bred for both temperament and health. They're trained by adults in custody at 3 of our institutions. They give the adults in custody purpose as they train these dogs. And then they give to community members who have challenges, gives them a companion, somebody that may help a vet with PTSD or a sight-impaired person. So our JLAD program is a wonderful program in our institutions. We have gardens at many of our institutions where we have excess food that's not used in our kitchens. We donate it to area food banks. We have peer mentor opportunities for adults in custody. So folks that have gone through certification programs to be peer mentors in substance use disorder treatment programs, for example, can help us in custody with their peers. And then when they're released, they can get hired as peer mentors in community-based programs. At our Snake River facility, our kitchen provides Meals on Wheels to seniors in that community. And then I'm sure that most of you know we have wildfire teams across the state of Oregon, 8 institutions, 365 trained AICs. Every institution sent a fire crew out this year. This is the work that is protecting and serving Oregonians.
Representative Graber.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you, Director. I just want to put on record, I have had the opportunity this last year to work with both South Fork crews and Coffee Creek crews, and the level of professionalism and expertise and dedication that those crews have is truly remarkable. So thank you for that, and it does make a difference on those fires, big time.
So with that, I appreciate your patience. It was a long presentation, a big overview and context for the next few days. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Director. This has been a great overview. Thank you. As we move through the next few days, I want to keep in mind the direction that we have from the full co-chairs, and specifically when it comes to investments that we can look at and set you up for success with now that are going to benefit taxpayers in the future, particularly when it comes to geriatric facility and geriatric care. I'm eager for us and the public to learn more about the potential plans there. And I am also curious, this is pretty granular, but in terms of disposal of contraband, I'm curious what DOC is doing right now, given changes we've had with how we're incinerating contraband, if you know.
Chair Broadbent, I'll have to get back to you with an answer on that.
Okay, thank you. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry I was late. Good information to the point of JLAD and the other circumstances where we have dogs doing things, whether it's checking for drugs or basically a program where folks inside can be around a dog. I believe in the past we've had conversations about trying to find out what the actual studies are in terms of what impact it has on the folks inside as well as the folks who are watching the folks inside. I believe it's a very cheap value that I'm hoping that you'll consider expanding more. Keeping people calm in those circumstances, I think, is one of the most important things, and dogs have a unique ability to do that. So I know it's not a big deal in terms of the dollars, but I think it's a force multiplier that if we can find the right way to and the right balance, it'll be good for everybody. So I look forward to hearing more about those programs.
Thank you.
Representative.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you, Director. Going back to seniors and in custody, what percentage, how is compassionate release being used currently?
Chair Broadman and Rep. Graber, compassionate release, it's challenging. Parole Board does have processes in place, and they have made changes in their rule structure to allow more robust opportunities. I think there was a catch-22 in the system that adults in custody had to ask for compassionate release. And if someone has dementia or other cognitive issues, that may not be possible. So now with recent rules that they've made at the Parole Board, there are opportunities for attorneys or the Parole Board or family members to make that request.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Campos.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you, Director. I was just wondering if it would be possible for us to get information on what the KPMs were for 2023. I noticed we just had 2024 up there, and I'd be interested in seeing the historical comparative data there.
Yeah, Chair Broadman, Senator Campos, yes, we'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Director Reese? I have a question about wildfire, if you know, and is there an ability to expand the program? If there is, what additional resources would we need? I mean, is this the maximum number of folks who can get trained up and are able to do the job? Because that's an expanding area.
Yeah, Chair Broadman, there are opportunities to expand the program. It is challenging because the adults in custody have to be able to work in the community. So that limits the number of AICs in custody who can participate in wildfire programs. Our partners at the Oregon Department of Forestry would like us to expand, particularly at South Fork. We have the opportunity to move more AICs there. It's just, finding the right people to do that safely.
Okay, thank you. Representative Choate.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We may be getting into this, and just given that we're a budget committee, I'd be interested in kind of the marginal cost as prison sentences are created. What's the obviously there's no one single number of what's the cost per person incarcerated, because it's going to depend what facility they're at, and if they're not there for that year, what is already being used, what's not being used. But I guess I'd be interested in figuring out what that range looks like and kind of what determines what's on the higher end of that range and what's on the lower end of that range.
Chair Broadman and Rep. Jolson, yes, we can get that information to you.
Thank you.
Representative Helfrich.
Thank you, Senator Brahman. Director Reese, what was it, in 23, you changed from the bind system to another notification system. And you talked about the wildland firefighting with your adults in custody. How has that notification system worked? I don't know if you know that today or not, but get back to us. How has that notification worked, and then how does that continue to evolve when you are using your adults in custody for firefighting efforts and notifying the victims and the potential victims, or the victims that are out there, and how that has worked out so far?
Chair Broadman and Rep. Helfrich, the Visor system's working well, and you'll hear from Assistant Director Larry Bennett, who oversees that program and can provide specific information about how it works when adults in custody are on work crews and working out of maybe a jurisdictional area. It's one thing to be assigned to South Fork and working in that area, but maybe a fire crew is working remotely, and the notification processes.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Director Reese. Well, I think we have time, if it's okay with you, to get started with Mr. Highberger. Okay, great.
He's anxiously awaiting his opportunity.
We're excited for operations to begin, so thank you, Director.
Good morning, Co-Chair Broadman, Co-Chair Evans, and the members of the committee. For the record, I am Josh Highberger, Assistant Director of Operations for the Oregon Department of Corrections. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the Operations Division and the critical role it plays within the Oregon Department of Corrections in our community. I'd like to start by giving you an overview of what we'll be covering today and possibly some more tomorrow. This will help guide our discussion as we move through the key initiatives. I'll begin by providing an overview of the Operations Division to include our institutions, adult and custody population, and facility locations. I'll then touch on the operations budget and then move into our key initiatives, which include security staffing overview, management of our high-risk population, and our enhanced security efforts. Given the time we have left today, I hope we can at least get through number 1 and 2 and possibly our security staffing. As Director Reese previously mentioned, the Oregon Department of Corrections has worked diligently to develop a new mission statement that reflects our commitment to protecting our communities, promoting accountability, and transforming lives. The Operations Division role in our mission statement is twofold: to ensure the safe and secure management of our institutions and to create an environment that is conducive to rehabilitation. Our responsibility is to maintain safety for our staff, adults in custody, our community, while also promoting a culture, programs, strategies that help our individuals address criminality and to rehabilitate. Here we transition to an overview of the Operations Division and then a very brief look at each of our individual institutions. The Oregon Department of Corrections Operation Division manages 12 institutions across the state. With a total population of nearly 12,000 adults in custody, each facility ranges from 200 to nearly 3,000 individuals, employing a total of over 3,300 employees. To organize our extensive operations, we have 2 administrators who report directly to myself. We have an East Side Institutions Administrator and a West Side Institutions Administrator. The East Side Institutions Administrator is responsible for overseeing our Special Housing Administrator and also our Oregon Way efforts. And our Westside Institutions Administrator manages our Chief of Security, who oversees the statewide emergency management, specialty team coordination, security threat management, and our statewide transport unit. Additionally, the Operations Division includes a small central services division that manages our policies, rules, and procedures, statewide food services, and our adult and custody work programs. As you see in your packets, we have a slide for actually each institution. In an effort to save a little bit of time, I'll quickly go through each institution slide. The intent was to provide you a visual of each institution and some very basic general information. If you have any additional questions or follow-up, please let us know and we're happy to give that back to you. Essentially though, we want you to see that each is a unique city within a city, and based on their location, infrastructure, and services, each provide a very important role to our agency and also our mission. First, we have the institutions that are supervised by our Westside Institutions Administrator, Tom McClay. Oregon State Penitentiary, located in Salem, is a medium and maximum security prison. As the state's oldest prison, it had been operating since 1866 and currently houses 2,288 adults in custody. On Wednesday, you'll hear from Tom Martin, our Assistant Director of Administrative Services, and will present on the Oregon State Penitentiary's requested renovation replacement project, as you also heard indicated by Director Reese today. Next, we move to Coffee Creek Correctional Facility in Wilsonville, which is a multi-custody, co-located facility that serves a dual purpose. It is both the state's only female facility and also the agency's intake center. The Coffee Creek Medium Facility opened in 2001 and has a capacity of 680 female beds and 432 male intake beds. And the minimum security facility has 540 female beds. This facility has been a key focus of our gender-informed practices assessment, and we are grateful for the ongoing support from the Governor's Office and the Legislative Committee, particularly through the support of the Gender-Informed Practices Assessment, Policy Option Package number 201. With this approval, it will greatly assist us moving forward with our vital gender and trauma-informed work. Columbia River Correctional Institution is a 553-bed minimum security facility located in Portland, co-managed alongside South Fork Forest Camp in Tillamook. Columbia River was established in 1990. South Fork Forest Camp in Tillamook is our smallest facility. Established in 1951, it provides housing for up to 204 adults in custody. South Fork Forest Camp's primary focus is partnership with the Oregon Department of Forestry, aimed at training adults in custody work crews to combat forest and wildland fires across the state. Oregon State Correctional Institution is an 884-bed medium security facility located in Salem. Established in 1955, it became fully operational in 1959. Santiam Correctional Institution, located in Salem, is a 440-bed minimum security institution. Originally built in 1946 as an annex to the Oregon State Hospital, it transitioned into a minimum release center with the Corrections Division in the 1980s, and in 1990 it officially became Santiam Correctional Institution. As we move east, Eastside Institutions Administrator Jamie Miller oversees the following facilities. Snake River Correctional Institution, which opened in 1991, is our largest facility. This institution is also co-located and includes both medium, maximum, and minimum security facilities on its campus. It houses up to 3,057 adults in custody. The minimum facility can hold up to 174, while our medium facility can house up to 2,883. It also houses the department's highest risk offenders and the department's only intensive management unit. Located in Umatilla, Two Rivers Correctional Institution was completed in 2000, has an overall capacity of 1,588 adults in custody. In addition to Coffee Creek, Snake River and Two Rivers is our third co-located facility with both a medium and minimum institution on its grounds. Our medium facility houses up to 1,460 adults in custody, while the minimum can hold up to 128. And I want to formally apologize on record. I'm looking at the screen here. That aerial view is not Two Rivers Correctional Institution. That was a placeholder that we originally did.
Okay.
I apologize for that, although those are very nice recreation grounds there.
And HVAC.
That is the inside, though. All right. Located in Pendleton, Eastern Oregon Correctional Institution has a capacity of 1,389 adults in custody. This facility was created by converting the Eastern Oregon State Hospital into a correctional institution. The first AICs were received in Pendleton in 1985. Powder River Correctional Facility is a 316-bed minimum facility located in Baker City. Powder River Correctional Facility was established in 1989. Deer Ridge Correctional Institution, located in Madras, opened in 2007 and is our newest facility. It includes both a medium and a minimum security facility on its ground and is currently being used to house up to 1,125 minimum custody AICs. The minimum security remains vacant today, providing the opportunity for future expansion in upcoming biennium, given our current POP forecast. And finally, Warner Creek Correctional Facility located in Lakeview. Warner Creek is a minimum custody facility that opened in 2005 and has a capacity of 383 beds. All right. Thank you for walking through that with me. I appreciate it. Hopefully it was helpful.
Yeah, and if you feel like you're getting to an organic moment to carry this over, let me know.
If you're okay with it, Co-Chair, I think we can get through budget here in the next 5 minutes, and it'll give us a good landing point for tomorrow.
Great.
Okay, thank you. All right, and here we can transition to the operations budget. This pie chart seen here shows the operations division budget in comparison to the rest of the agency budget. The Department of Corrections legislatively approved budget for 23-25 was just under $2.5 billion, with the operations division representing 45% of the budget at $1.2 billion, which is highlighted here on the right side of the pie chart in light blue. The operations division is mostly fully funded by general funds, with only $17 million funded by other funds. The division's allocated budget covers staff salaries and benefits, amenities for the adults in custody, such as food and clothing, cognitive programs, and maintenance of the institutions. As noted here, 8% of the general fund budget accounts for AIC-related costs, and 92% goes to our personnel services. This pie chart reflects the breakdown of the 3,311 full-time employees in the operations division. The total number of FTE represent approximately 72% of the agency's overall staff. Represented by the large dark blue piece of the pie chart, 79% of operations FTE are dedicated to represented and management security positions, while the other 21% represent physical plant staff, food service coordinators, administrative support staff, and facility and administrative management positions. We got a few minutes, right? Okay. Here we further examine the breakdown of those security positions represented on the previous slide. 75% of these security positions are correctional officers, as shown here by the large dark blue piece of the pie chart. Correctional officers are essential to the Department of Corrections, as their primary function is to ensure the security and safety of the facility, the AICs, staff, and our community, while also role modeling pro-social behavior and supporting positive changes to those in our care and custody. Security staff are certified and trained first responders and are first on scene to any critical incident within the institution. These roles set the foundation for our department and are the most challenging to recruit and retain. I think if we want to stop here tomorrow, we'll really get into those staffing numbers and our recruitment challenges.
Great,
That's
sounds
okay with
good.
you, Co-Chair.
Yeah, any questions? All right, great. Well, for now, I will close the informational hearing on 5004, and we will continue tomorrow. I will ask subcommittee members if you have any comments. Steve, I think we know what we're doing tomorrow. We know what we're doing. Okay. I'll adjourn the subcommittee meeting and see everybody tomorrow. Thanks.